So before I can make this back panel here, we got to replace these little wings. They were all rotten out. Just water sits behind. And it all rusted out. So I made these guys with a bead roller. I'm gonna have to get these clamped in. I just use self tappers in these holes. It pulls it tight. And after I get these spot welded, we'll push this guy in and finish welding across the seam. Once that's done, get the rest of this panel made. I went ahead and cut this back panel off completely. I drilled out all the spot welds. I went around all the outside. Drilled all the spot welds everywhere it connected and then cut off along the top of this ridge here. I got rid of all the surface rust up here, all the scale with a wire wheel, and then I sprayed it with some rust treatment. That way inside of here is getting converted. It's fixed. And then what I'll do is cut out a new panel to go back here and then spot weld it into place after I fit it up. One thing I'm gonna go try with the bead roller is to take a piece of metal and run a bead all the way around here. That looks like a picture frame. And what that's gonna do is help with any of the vibration of the panel, give it some strength. So I'm gonna try that out on a smaller piece of metal to see how it shrinks the metal, to see if it warps it or whatever. And if I like it, then I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll put that panel into here. If not, then I'll just cut a flat panel and put it up there. So I'm gonna let this set up, go ahead and try a bead in a rectangle piece and see how it holds up. And then I'll cut this piece to get fitted in here. I'll cut a little bit large, that way if it shrinks from this bead getting put into it, it can fit into place. I've got the new panel made. We cut the top support off and used, where's a piece of it at? I cut the top support out of here and I used a 1.5 by 1.5 inch square tube to replace what was here. There was pinholes in it and it was just a little too pitted for me to keep using. The profile of the old piece, I'll get it, was very similar to the square tube. So this guy can fit literally inside of here. So from the front or inside of the bed, you're really not going to notice the difference between the two pieces. So I replaced that top support with a 1.5 square tube, cut this piece of sheet metal, put it in the bead roller. We got this nice profile in here to give it some strength so it doesn't sit there and just oil can the whole time. Right now I'm going to pull this off, get it over on the bench, drill all the holes out for where the spot welds go, prime the back of this metal, and weld it into place. After that, we can start on getting the other cross members in and the bedwood. The strips did come in from bedwood, finally. Only took 3 weeks. So we can start fitting that up. So I'm gonna go take this over to the bench now, drill all the holes for where the spot welds go, shoot some primer on the back of this guy, and then we can start getting it welded into place. And from here you can see where we've replaced that square tube. I spent the evening getting this panel welded in. I spot welded all around the outsides and clamped it down as I went to keep it tight on the metal. We set the bedwood and the strips down inside the bed so I could figure out where the last two cross members go. Today I'm going to weld those guys in and then start cutting this lumber on the table saw to make the notch that these bed strips sit in to hold the wood down. We're gonna get all that cut out, start setting it in here. I pretty much have the layout and the boards marked where I want them, except for the small one's gonna go in the middle. But that's all I'm gonna do today. And once I get everything fitted, take it back apart, start prepping these boards for stain and epoxy coating. We're almost there. So Chuck and I have been working all day, cutting all this wood and getting it all fit and set in here to look right. I'm starting to cut the last couple of these wood retainers to hold the wood down, and I wanted to bring you guys in here and show you what we've accomplished today. We've pretty much got all the wood cut, and we just need to cut some of these wood retainers so that they fit up against the fender well. So on these guys right here that run next to the fenders, I wanted to keep this same look from these hold downs and just trim a little bit off of the side that's not going to be utilized so that it sits up against the wheel well. So I've gotten all the little pieces except for that side done. I just got to trim up one of these and then it'll fit. And then I'm going to have to do a little bit of measuring and some layout to know what all I need to remove. The idea is this guy's going to sit up at full width here, and then just the one side is going to retain this side for look only, and then the other piece sits up here in the front. So this is what we have for the wood. The rest of the week I'm going to be taking this and staining it and sealing it and doing all that, and then putting the bed back on the frame and starting to make sure everything's welded up, fits right, all the cross members are in, and then I'll paint it hopefully next weekend. So now that we've gotten all the wood cut, fit, and the retainer strips fit into place, we can now take all this out and stain it. Luckily I got a Chuck. She can take care of all that while I get the bed back on the truck and then put the final cross members in. I don't have the front cross member and the back cross member in yet because I gotta put it on when it's in the truck to figure out where the bolts go to mount it to the frame. So we're gonna do that today, as well as stain that, and then maybe start painting the metal retainers that hold the wood down. I'm gonna shoot those metal color. That way we have some contrast between the wood, the strips, and then the green on the sides of the bed. After I get all the welding done, I'll be able to paint the whole inside of the bed and the front panel here and start putting it back together. There's one more piece of fabrication I have to do on the back. I'll show you guys what I do there later, but it's to make up for the thickness that I have of this wood. So let's get all this out of here. I guess we'll need to mark it too to make sure we know where it goes. So before I get too far into putting everything back together and welding up the bed, I wanted to go over what I did to cut the bed wood. I set the saw first to the blade being 1/2 inch from the table, sticking up, and then the fence being back 3/16. And what that did is allow me to run the piece of wood down like this, in this orientation, and then cut the first cut. And then what I did is I took the fence and moved it back from the blade 1/2 of an inch, and then the blade to stick up 3/16 of an inch, or actually 4/16, so 1/4 of an inch, and then laid the wood down flat like this and ran it through the bandsaw, and that cut this notch. So if you look at the way these metal retainers sit, they stick down into the wood roughly 1/16, or actually it's probably less than that, but anyways, I cut it down 1/16 deeper, and then it's 1/2 an inch from this bolt hole to the edge there. So that gives us enough space for the carriage bolt to pass through. I was having trouble finding information on how far apart these boards were when I went to do all the wood, and that actually held me up. So I'm doing this so that everybody can have a little bit of information. I'm sure somebody's watching this video and is looking to do a wood bed. So I have my ruler here, and the gap in the wood after the retainer is set in place is 1/2 of an inch. The retainer itself is 1 1/2 of an inch wide, and these, I'm gonna call them ribs here, are 3/8. So it's 3/8 and 3/8. And then the flat spot here in the middle is, what is that? 3/4. So you got 3/4, 3/8, and 3/8. There's your measurements for the retainer, and then what I did for cutting this bedwood. So obviously the bed's back on the car, and after spending some time on my plasma table and my press brake, I made some brackets. So these brackets are going to sit right here on the frame up against this front cross member. One thing I found after I got the bed on is I started shifting this around to get it lined up with the rear holes and these fronts. I wanted to make sure that this gap here is the same on both sides. Right now, that side needs to go forward about 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is put this bracket on first, weld it into place, bolt it down, get a pry bar, push that side of the bed forward, and then weld and put that bracket into place. And what that'll do is keep everything where I want it to be, and I can finish welding up all the rest of these cross members and hope that everything stays square. It's not going to be perfect, obviously, because it's an old bed, but I'll get it as close as I can get. So let's grab the welder and my welding helmet, weld this bracket in, and start getting the rest of this frame welded up, all these cross members welded in. So as I get these last two cross members in, I'm trying to figure out where exactly they're going to go. These brackets have holes in it, or these wood hold downs have holes in it, and ideally I want this front one to fall here so that I can drill holes to it, and then that'll help hold the wood down to the bed instead of just floating in the air bolted down with just these guys. This back one though is a little bit more tricky. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do because I have this rear hanger here for the leaf spring, and if I go to lower the truck and buy the leaf spring extension hanger and the front one that you can adjust the height, I'm going to be able to do that still without having this guy in the way. So I think I'm going to put forward of the spring hanger and we'll go from there. Worst case scenario, I have to cut it out later and then move it back, but I think this will be fine. So I'm going to get this squared up and then weld it in. There's first, there's second. Let's go ahead and put it in drive. There's reverse.